When a dying woman begged the city's most feared mafia boss for one final wish, he expected anything but this. Her request would unravel decades of secrets, force him to confront his greatest fear, and change his destiny forever. Some last wishes don't grant peace. They shatter everything you thought you knew. If you're new here, subscribe and comment your location. Now let's begin. You're going to marry her, Daniel. That's my last wish. The words hung in the air of the sterile hospital room like a death sentence, and Daniel Castellano, the most feared mafia boss on the East Coast, felt his blood run cold. He stared at the frail woman in the bed, her papery skin stretched over bones that seemed too delicate to have ever held strength, her eyes still sharp as broken glass despite the morphine drip keeping her tethered to this world. "With all due respect, Mrs. Chen," Daniel said slowly, his jaw tight, "I don't take orders, not even from dying women." The old woman's laugh was a dry rattle that turned into a cough. The nurse moved forward, but Elena Chen waved her away with a trembling hand that still somehow commanded authority. "Sit down, boy. I'm not asking." Daniel remained standing, his 6'3" frame rigid in his $1,000 suit. He'd come to this hospice as a courtesy, nothing more. When Elena Chen had sent word through his underboss that she had information about a threat to his organization, he'd expected intelligence, names, locations. Not this. Not her piercing gaze dissecting him like he was still the street rat who'd clawed his way to the top through blood and ruthlessness. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, old woman, but I don't have time for— Your great-grandmother sends her regards." The room tilted. Daniel's hand instinctively moved toward the gun at his back. "My great-grandmother died in 1963, before I was born." Elena's smile was knowing, sad, and utterly terrifying. Did she now? Or did Isabella Castellano simply disappear one winter night, leaving behind an empire and a heartbroken husband who drank himself to death within 5 years? The name punched through Daniel's chest. Isabella Castellano, the ghost story of his family, the founding mother, the legend whispered about in the organization his grandfather had supposedly built from nothing. Except the old-timers always spoke of her with a reverence that suggested his grandfather had merely inherited her throne. "You're insane," Daniel said, but his voice lacked conviction. Elena reached beneath her pillow with excruciating slowness and pulled out a photograph so old it had yellowed at the edges. She held it out, and Daniel found himself moving forward, despite every instinct screaming at him to leave. His fingers closed around the photograph, and he felt the ground shift beneath his feet. The woman in the picture was young, perhaps 30, standing in front of the old warehouse on the docks that now served as one of his main operations. She wore a fitted suit dress that screamed 1950s, her dark hair swept back, her eyes fierce and intelligent, and unmistakable, because Daniel had seen those eyes every morning in the mirror for 35 years. "That's impossible," he whispered. "I faked my death because I thought I was protecting everyone," Elena said softly. "Protecting your grandfather, who was just a boy then, barely 20. Protecting the man I loved, who begged me to leave this life. I thought if I disappeared, if Isabella Castellano died, they'd all be safe. The rivals would have no one to target, my family could grieve and move on, and Antonio could find someone better, someone clean." Daniel's mind raced through family history, through the stories he'd been told. His grandfather had been 10 in 1963. His great-grandfather Antonio had been a businessman, or so the sanitized family history claimed. "Antonio Russo," he said slowly. "The restaurant owner." "The love of my life," Elena confirmed. "And the biggest mistake I ever made was walking away from him. He spent 40 years looking for me, did you know that? 40 years before the cancer took him. I watched him from afar, watched him age, watched him search, and I told myself I'd done the right thing." Her eyes glistened. "I was a coward, Daniel, and I've spent 60 years paying for it." "Why tell me this now?" Daniel demanded, though his voice had lost its edge. "Why not take this to your grave?" Because you're about to make the same mistake. Elena's hand shot out with surprising strength and gripped his wrist. Jessica, you pushed her away 3 months ago, told her you couldn't give her the life she deserved, told her your world was too dangerous. Sound familiar? Daniel jerked back as if burned. How do you know about Jessica? I've been watching over this family for 60 years, boy. Did you think I'd just disappear completely? I've had eyes everywhere, protecting from the shadows, and now I'm dying. And I'll be damned if I watch my blood repeat my mistakes. Elena's voice grew stronger, fueled by something beyond morphine and dying wishes. That girl loves you, really loves you. Not your money, not your power. You. And you love her so much it terrifies you. Daniel turned away, his hands clenching into fists. Jessica. God, even her name was a knife to his gut. 3 months since he'd walked away from the best thing that had ever happened to him. 3 months of telling himself it was for her own good. That she deserved a man who could give her normal, safe, a future that didn't involve looking over her shoulder or attending funerals of good men who'd died badly. She's better off, he said roughly. Is she? Elena challenged. Or is she miserable, like you're miserable? Like Antonio was miserable until the day he died? It's different. The life I lead is the same life I led. Elena's voice cracked like a whip. I ran an empire, Daniel. I made men disappear. I ordered hits. I negotiated with politicians and cops and rival families. And Antonio knew. He saw me, all of me, the blood on my hands and the darkness in my soul. And he loved me anyway. He would have stood beside me, would have been my partner. And I threw that away because I was afraid. Daniel turned back to face her, and he was shocked to see tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. In that moment, he saw past the dying old woman to the fierce young queen in the photograph. If Antonio knew everything, if he really accepted it all, then why did you leave? Because I didn't accept it, Elena whispered. I didn't believe I deserved to be loved, didn't believe someone good could really want someone like me, so I made the choice for him, decided for him, took away his agency because I was so convinced I knew better. She laughed bitterly. The great Isabella Castellano, who feared nothing, was terrified of being happy. Terrified that if I reached for that happiness, it would be ripped away in some cosmic punishment for my sins. The words hit too close to home. Daniel felt his carefully constructed walls cracking. Jessica deserves better than a man who let her decide that. Elena's voice was fierce. That's my last wish, Daniel. Not that you marry her tomorrow, but that you stop being a coward like I was. Go to her, tell her the truth. Tell her you love her, tell her you're terrified, and then let her choose. Give her what I never gave Antonio, give her a choice. And if she chooses to walk away, then you respect that, but at least you'll know. You won't spend 60 years wondering what if. You won't die alone in a hospice room, surrounded by strangers, your only family a great-grandson who doesn't even know you exist. Elena's breathing was becoming labored. Please, Daniel, don't let my legacy be teaching you how to be alone. Let it be teaching you that even people like us deserve love. That maybe being loved doesn't make us weaker. Maybe it makes us human. Daniel stood frozen, his mind a war zone of conflicting emotions. He thought of Jessica's laugh, bright and genuine, thought of the way she'd looked at him the last time he'd seen her, when he'd told her they were done. She hadn't cried, hadn't begged. She just stared at him with those intelligent hazel eyes and said, "You're a coward, Daniel Castellano, and that's the saddest thing I've ever learned about you." He'd almost broken then, almost told her the truth, that every day with her had been the first time in his life he'd felt like something other than a monster, that she made him want to be better, that the thought of her caught in crossfire, hurt because of him, was a terror that eclipsed anything his enemies could inflict. But he hadn't said any of that. He'd just turned and walked away. "How did you do it?" he asked quietly. "How did you walk away from him?" Elena's smile was sad. "I broke both our hearts and called it love. I watched from a distance as he grieved, as he aged, as he eventually stopped looking for me, but never stopped loving me. I attended his funeral from the back of the church, an old Chinese woman no one would look twice at, and I realized I'd wasted our lives on fear. She reached out again, and this time Daniel let her take his hand. Her grip was weak, but her eyes burned. "Don't be me, Daniel. Be better than me." "I don't know if I can," he admitted, and the vulnerability in his voice surprised him. "You can, because unlike me, you're brave enough to admit you're afraid. That's half the battle right there." Elena's breathing rattled. "Now get out of here. I need to rest, and you need to find Jessica." Daniel looked down at the photograph still in his hand. The fierce young woman staring back at him seemed to challenge him across the decades. "What if it's too late? It's only too late when you're dead, boy. And you're still breathing. Aren't you?" He studied his great-grandmother, this woman who'd shaped his entire life without him knowing it. "Will I see you again?" "Doubtful. I'm tired, Daniel. So tired. But I can die easier knowing I finally did something right." Elena's eyes drifted closed. "Now go. And when you marry that girl, because you will, you stubborn Castellano, I want you to name your first daughter Isabella, not for me, for who I should have been." Daniel stood there for a long moment, watching her breathe. Then he bent and pressed a kiss to her forehead, this stranger who was family, this ghost who'd haunted his lineage. "Thank you," he whispered. "Great-grandmother." Her smile, even with her eyes closed, was radiant. "Finally, someone calls me family. Took you long enough." He was at the door when her voice stopped him one more time. "Daniel, Jessica's favorite flowers are sunflowers. She thinks they're hopeful, and she's allergic to shellfish, so don't be an idiot and take her somewhere expensive that serves lobster. She likes dive bars and terrible action movies, and she sings off-key in the shower. Antonio used to bring me reports. Couldn't help himself even from the grave." Daniel's throat tightened. "He knew? That you were watching?" "Left me a letter. Found it after he died. Said he'd known for 20 years, that he understood, that he forgave me, and that he hoped I'd someday forgive myself." Elena's voice cracked. "I never did. But maybe you can do better than me in that department too." The drive back to his penthouse was a blur. Daniel's mind kept circling back to the photograph in his pocket, to Elena's words, to the crushing weight of 60 years of regret distilled into one dying woman's plea. His phone buzzed incessantly with business that needed his attention: territory disputes, money to launder, shipments to approve, the endless machinery of his empire demanding to be fed. He ignored it all. Instead, he found himself pulling up to a modest apartment building in Brooklyn, nowhere near his usual territory. Jessica's building. He'd driven past it exactly 17 times in the last 3 months, never stopping, never going in, just torturing himself with proximity to what he'd willingly destroyed. This time he parked. It was Marcus, his driver and bodyguard, who finally spoke up. "Boss, you sure about this? It's nearly midnight." Daniel checked his Rolex. 11:47 p.m. In 13 minutes, it would be tomorrow. A new day. Maybe that was fitting. Maybe that's what Elena had been trying to tell him, that it was never too late to start over, to be better, to be brave. "Wait here," Daniel said, stepping out into the cool spring night. The building had no doorman, no security. It made his skin crawl, all the ways someone could get to her. But that was his paranoia talking. The reality was that Jessica had lived here safely for 5 years before he'd met her, and she'd been just fine. She didn't need his protection. She never had. That had been his excuse, not her reality. He took the stairs to the 3rd floor, his heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with physical exertion. Outside her door, 3C, he'd memorized it like a prayer. He hesitated. What was he even going to say? That a dying woman he'd just met claimed to be his long-dead great-grandmother and told him to stop being an idiot? That he'd been miserable for 3 months and was hoping she was miserable too? that he was still the same dangerous man he'd been when he'd walked away, but now he was a dangerous man who was tired of being noble? Before he could spiral further, the door opened. Jessica stood there in old NYU sweatpants and a tank top, her honey blonde hair piled in a messy bun, her face free of makeup, her hazel eyes wide with shock. She was holding a pint of ice cream in one hand and a spoon in the other. Ben & Jerry's, chocolate therapy, her breakup flavor. He'd learned that the one other time they'd broken up for 3 days back when they'd first started dating, and he'd tried to pull away then too. "Daniel," she breathed. "You look beautiful," he said, because it was true, and because he was apparently doing this with no plan and no filter. "It's almost midnight. I look like a disaster. What are you doing here?" She wasn't hostile, wasn't cold, just tired, like she'd used up all her fighting energy and had nothing left. "I met someone today, a dying woman. She told me I was making the biggest mistake of my life." Daniel shoved his hands in his pockets to keep from reaching for her. "She told me I was a coward." Jessica's lips quirked slightly. "I believe I told you the same thing 3 months ago." "You did. You were right. You're always right, and it's infuriating." He took a breath. "Can I come in? Please?" She studied him for a long moment, and Daniel felt like he was being weighed and measured and found wanting, but then she stepped back, opening the door wider. "I'm not dressed for company." "You're perfect," he said simply, stepping into the small apartment that had somehow become more of a home than his sprawling penthouse ever was. Jessica closed the door and leaned against it, still clutching her ice cream like a shield. "So a dying woman sent you here. That's romantic." She was my great-grandmother, the one who supposedly died in 1963, except she didn't. She faked her death because she was in love with a man and thought leaving him would protect him. Daniel moved further into the apartment, his hands still in his pockets. She spent 60 years regretting it, watching him from a distance, watching him grieve, and she died today knowing she'd wasted both their lives on fear. Jessica set down the ice cream carefully on the small table by the door. "Daniel, what are you doing here?" "Trying not to be her," he said roughly. "Trying not to spend the next 60 years knowing I threw away the only real thing I've ever had because I was too afraid to be selfish." "And you think it's that simple? You just show up at midnight and what? We pick up where we left off?" Her voice cracked slightly. "You destroyed me, Daniel. You looked me in the eye and told me you didn't love me enough to fight for me." "I never said that. I said you deserved better." "Which is just a cowardly way of saying the same thing." Jessica's voice rose, and he saw tears gathering. "You don't get to decide what I deserve. You don't get to make choices for me like I'm some damsel who can't think for herself. I knew what your life was. I knew who you were, and I chose you anyway. But apparently my choice didn't matter. Your fear mattered more than my agency." The words hit him like physical blows, made worse because they echoed Elena's confession so perfectly. "You're right." Jessica blinked. "What?" "You're absolutely right. I took away your choice. I decided for you. And it wasn't noble, it was selfish. Because it was easier to walk away and play the martyr than to risk staying and possibly losing you in some way I couldn't control." Daniel pulled the photograph from his pocket and held it out. "This is Isabella Castellano, my great-grandmother, the real founder of everything my family built. She walked away from the man she loved because she was afraid. She thought she was protecting him, and she watched him die without ever telling him she was alive, that she never stopped loving him." Jessica took the photograph with trembling fingers, studying the fierce woman frozen in time. "She looks like you. Same eyes. Same fear, apparently. Same pride. Same stubborn certainty that we know better than everyone else." Daniel moved closer, close enough to smell her coconut shampoo, close enough to see the faint freckles across her nose that makeup usually hid. "She told me not to be her, to let you choose, to stop being so arrogant that I think I can decide what's best for everyone." "And what if I choose to tell you to leave?" Jessica asked quietly, but she didn't step back. "Then I leave, and I respect that, but I had to come here. I had to tell you." He stopped, the words catching in his throat. Words he'd never said to anyone. Words that felt like vulnerability and terror, and the most honest thing he'd ever attempted. "Tell me what?" Jessica prompted, and her voice was gentle now, coaxing. "That I love you." The words came out rough, unpracticed. "That I've loved you since you spilled coffee on my suit and laughed instead of apologizing. That every day without you has been gray. That I wake up reaching for you and fall asleep wishing I could hear you singing off-key in my shower. That you're the only person who's ever made me feel like I could be something other than what my life made me. That I'm terrified every single day that something will happen to you because of me. But I'm more terrified of dying never having really lived because I was too afraid to be happy." Tears were streaming down Jessica's face now, and Daniel's hands came up automatically to cup her face, his thumbs brushing away the moisture. "I can't promise you normal. I can't promise you safe. I'm still going to be who I am, but I can promise you that I will never walk away again, that I will respect your choices, that I will love you with everything I have for as long as you'll let me. And if that's not enough, if you need more, then I'll figure out how to be more. Because losing you was the worst thing I've ever done to myself, and I've done some truly terrible things." Jessica laughed through her tears, the sound wet and broken and somehow perfect. "You're an idiot. I know. You're dramatic and controlling and you think you always know best. I know. And I've been miserable for 3 months." Her hands came up to cover his where they still cupped her face. "I've missed you so much I thought I was going crazy. I kept writing texts and deleting them. I drove past your office building like a stalker. I wore your shirt to sleep even though it doesn't smell like you anymore because I washed it too many times." Hope bloomed in Daniel's chest, painful and bright. "Jessica. But if you ever make decisions for me again, if you ever walk away to protect me without talking to me first, I will kill you myself, Mafia boss or not. Are we clear?" He couldn't help it. He laughed, the sound rusty from disuse. "Crystal clear, I promise. Full transparency, full partnership. You get a say in everything." "Even the illegal stuff?" she asked, and there was a hint of mischief in her eyes now. "Even the illegal stuff. I'll even show you the books if you want." "I do want. I'm an accountant, Daniel. A forensic accountant. Do you know how much your illegal empire has been bothering my professional sensibilities? Your money laundering schemes are embarrassingly obvious. Are you seriously critiquing my criminal enterprise right now? Someone has to. It's a mess. I could do so much better." Jessica's smile was watery but genuine. "I missed fighting with you about your terrible business practices. I missed you telling me I'm an idiot while simultaneously fixing my problems." Daniel leaned his forehead against hers. "So is that a yes? You'll give me another chance?" "That depends. Did you really drive past my building 17 times? Her eyes sparkled with humor now. He felt heat rise in his cheeks. "Maybe. Stalker. Hopelessly in love. Same thing, apparently." Jessica's hands slid up to curl around his neck. "Your great-grandmother sounds like a wise woman." "She was. She is." "Was." Daniel still wasn't entirely sure how to process everything. "She wanted me to name my first daughter after her, Isabella." Jessica raised an eyebrow. "Pretty presumptuous. We just got back together and she's already planning grandchildren?" "Great-great-grandchildren, technically." "Even worse." But Jessica was smiling, really smiling, and Daniel felt something in his chest unlock, something that had been clenched tight for 3 months. For longer. Maybe for his whole life. "I'm going to kiss you now," he said softly. "If that's okay?" "It's about time," Jessica murmured. And then she was pulling him down and he was lifting her up and their mouths were meeting with 3 months of desperate hunger behind them. She tasted like chocolate and salt and home. Her hands tangled in his hair, tugging almost painfully. And he groaned into her mouth, pressing her back against the door. She wrapped her legs around his waist, and his hands slid under her tank top, finding warm skin and the familiar territory of her body. God, he'd missed this, missed her, the way she felt against him, The little sounds she made, the way she bit his lower lip when she wanted more. "Bedroom," she gasped against his mouth. "Now." He didn't need to be told twice. Carrying her through the small apartment, he navigated around furniture he'd memorized months ago, his mouth never leaving hers. They hit the bedroom doorframe slightly, both of them laughing, the sound breathless and young and perfect. "Smooth," Jessica teased. "I'm distracted. You're distracting. It's a problem." He laid her on the bed, covering her body with his, and for a moment just looked at her. Hair spread across the pillow like honey, cheeks flushed, eyes bright. "You're so beautiful, it hurts. Stop talking and kiss me." Bossy. "You love it." He did. He loved everything about her, and as he kissed her again, as their bodies remembered each other, as the night stretched toward dawn, Daniel sent up a silent thank you to Elena Chen, to Isabella Castellano, to the fierce woman who'd been brave enough in her last moments to save him from her fate. Later, much later, Jessica lay curled against his chest, her fingers tracing idle patterns on his skin. "What happened to her?" "Your great-grandmother." "She's dying. Was dying. Might be gone already." Daniel felt a pang of loss for the woman he'd barely known. "She said she was tired. I wish I could have met her. To thank her. For what? For loving you enough to make sure you didn't make her mistakes, for giving you the push you needed." Jessica pressed a kiss to his chest, right over his heart. "For giving you back to me." Daniel's arms tightened around her. "I need to tell you something. About the life I lead, about what being with me really means." "Okay." She didn't tense, didn't pull away, just listened as he told her everything. The territory wars, the violence, the risks, the reality that his enemies might target her to get to him, the fact that his phone could ring at 3 a.m. with news of another body, another problem, another fire to put out. He didn't soften it, didn't downplay it. He gave her the truth, raw and ugly. When he finished, Jessica was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Can I see the books tomorrow?" "Your financial records, all of them." That startled a laugh out of him. "That's your response? You want to audit me?" "Well, yeah, if I'm going to be the wife of a mafia boss." "Wife?" His heart stopped. She propped herself up on her elbow, looking down at him with a mixture of exasperation and fondness. "Eventually, when you get around to asking properly, with a ring and everything, I'm traditional that way. But if I'm going to be part of this, I'm going to be really part of it. Your partner. That means I need to know everything, understand everything, and probably fix your terrible money laundering schemes before the FBI catches on." Daniel couldn't speak. He pulled her down and kissed her instead, trying to pour everything he felt into it. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he managed, "You're insane. I'm in love with a mafia boss. Clearly sanity isn't my strong suit." Jessica settled back against his chest. "Besides, someone needs to keep you from being an idiot. Apparently it's a family trait, this dramatic martyrdom thing. I refuse to let you pull that again." "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Now go to sleep. You're going to need your energy. Tomorrow we're going to have a very long conversation about your organizational structure and your succession plans and why you don't have enough legitimate business fronts. It's amateur hour over here." Despite everything, the emotional whiplash of the day, the weight of Elena's revelations, the huge step he'd just taken, Daniel found himself smiling into the darkness. "I love you," he said again, because he could now, because he was allowed to, because she'd chosen him anyway. "I love you too, you dramatic idiot." Jessica yawned. "Now shut up and let me sleep. Some of us have work in the morning." "What work? You're unemployed. You quit your job after we broke up." "Details. I need my beauty sleep." "You're perfect." "Shut up, Daniel." "Yes, ma'am." He felt her smile against his chest, and something in him settled. Some restless, violent thing that had been prowling inside him his whole life finally went quiet. Elena had been right. Love didn't make him weaker. It made him human, made him whole. made him something other than the monster he'd been raised to be. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. Marcus, probably wondering if he was coming back. Daniel ignored it. For the first time in his life, the empire could wait. The business could wait. Everything could wait. Because he had Jessica in his arms, and she'd chosen him, and that was worth more than every dollar and every drop of blood he'd ever spilled in service of building his kingdom. "Thank you," he whispered into her hair, though he wasn't sure if he was talking to Jessica or to Elena or to some higher power he'd never believed in. Maybe all three. Maybe it didn't matter. What mattered was that he was here, that he'd been brave enough to come, that he'd been given a second chance to not waste his life on fear. "For what?" Jessica mumbled, half asleep. "For choosing me. For fighting for me when I was too stupid to fight for myself. For being stubborn and brilliant and perfect." You're welcome. Now sleep." He did, for the first time in 3 months, sleeping deeply and dreamlessly, Jessica's heart beat against his ribs, the only rhythm he needed. In a hospice across the city, Elena Chen took her last breath with a smile on her face, the heart monitor's steady beep going flat. The nurse who came to check on her found a photograph clutched in her hand, a young man in a soldier's uniform standing next to a restaurant, his eyes full of love as he looked at something beyond the camera's frame. On the back, in faded ink, someone had written, "Forever yours, even in silence, even across the years, even when you think you're alone. I'm watching, I'm waiting, I'm loving you still." The nurse tucked the photograph back into Elena's hand and closed her eyes gently. Some love stories didn't end happy, but maybe, just maybe, some of them taught the next generation how to do better, how to be braver, how to choose love over fear. In Brooklyn, Daniel Castellano held the woman he loved and dreamed of sunflowers and dive bars and terrible action movies, dreamed of a life that was messy and dangerous and absolutely perfect because she was in it, dreamed of a small girl with her mother's smile and her great-great-grandmother's fierce eyes, learning that being strong didn't mean being alone. And somewhere, in whatever came after, Elena Chen finally found peace. Her legacy wasn't an empire built on blood and power. It was a love story. It was a second chance. It was a stubborn, dramatic mafia boss learning to be brave enough to be happy. Sometimes that's all a dying wish needed to be. A push in the right direction. A reminder that choosing love over fear wasn't weakness. It was the hardest, bravest thing anyone could do. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, someone loved you enough to make sure you didn't waste your life learning that lesson too late. Thank you for watching. Would you walk away from love to protect someone, or fight to stay together no matter the danger? Drop a comment below with your answer and where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe for more emotional stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat.